Kat started out behind hostel bars in Australia. Say no more. Before making her way to the Savoy's American bar. I would say it's a true hospitality rags to riches story. Since then, she's built a reputation as one of the leading voices in agave spirits and cocktail culture. I met Kat in Mexico in 2022 when she was the UK Patron Perfectionist winner, and I can fully confirm her agave and cocktail credentials. She's now the creative director at Viajante, while also working as a freelance photographer, artist, and designer, I want to say, and ceramicist at this point. And if that wasn't enough, she's getting married next week. So a big rock.
Big week for love.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me okay, first and foremost? Hallelujah. Alrighty, so I have the joyous task of essentially taking you on a cute little journey to the past. Ooh, it moves. Huzzah. There we go. So, classic cocktails and why we should actually care about where our cocktail culture has come from, why we drink the way we do today, and the different areas within eras and phases that essentially gave us this route and where we are now. Like Remy very cleverly said, today's cocktails can be a little bit weird and wonderful, but where did that all start? Where did the original come from? And why is that important to where we are now? So first off, we're going to kind of go through a couple of really important phases throughout history that have sort of shaped the cocktail world that we know today, with classics at the root. We're then going to kind of go a little bit onto what makes classics a classic, and where did that birth of a classic cocktail come from. Then going through a little bit of the influence, how Jameson managed to influence quite a lot of the whiskey world. And then we're going to do a cheeky little case study on my past haunt, the Savoy, along with a little trial and tribulation of how our palates have changed over the last few centuries. So phases. Basically, what do I mean by phases? It's very, very simple, to be honest. It basically just meant what was trendy at the time. What was hip, what was the culture, what were people doing? And throughout time, we've seen a variety of different phases come through, especially within the cocktail world. But it started millennia ago. I mean, years and years and years and years. But we've seen all of the phases from Prohibition, the tiki bar phase, the agave boom, and then the minimalist and maximalist essential fight out. And it's been interesting to see how history and how social culture and how interactions with people have essentially developed this drinking culture. So first and foremost, ancient origins. Funny enough, turns out us humans love a good bev. And we have for a very, very long time. There's been proof of alcohol making coming from tens of thousands of years ago, from Mayans to ancient Romans, Egyptians. All over the globe, we have been obsessed with alcohol and distilling and building into something really delicious. When we first sort of started playing around with alcohols, though, it was very much more for a medicinal purpose, not necessarily to induce those psychotropic quantities that alcohol can give. It was very much focused on flavor profiles and how we could essentially develop a better flavor overall. Now, the arrival of sugar opened up an entire new era, and by the time we got to sort of medieval times, the rich were firing in all those luxury goods, thank you, all those luxury goods brought over from the east by land and sea, and we started to see much more of a focus on alcoholic beverages becoming a core focus to the human race. Now, it gets a little interesting when we start talking about alcohol and religion, but it's definitely something that we need to sort of touch on because it is very important within the development of how people drink. So basically, distilling added an entire new layer of flavor and possibilities. And when the monks got involved, they did it with such a religious care and with such strategic moments. It was more of a ceremony and more of a ceremonial process in creating these liqueurs. when they were adding the herbs and spices to their homemade alcohols, it was done in such a way that they created the most beautiful liqueurs, things that we wouldn't have necessarily seen in other parts of the world, because it was done with such refinement because of the way that they were tying it back to giving back to their religion. So you ended up with these beautiful liqueurs coming from everywhere. However, the relationship between religion and alcohol, it's completely diverse, right? So it played a very, very important part in a lot of different religious ceremonies, whether it be, accompanying the deceased on their final venture, whether it was celebrating ceremonies or changes of season. Alcohol has always been very much present within this category. Now, it could be wine, beer, pulque in Central America. We have all of these different varieties that we've seen throughout different religions. Wine, however, definitely became the sort of go-to and soon replaced animal blood for sacrifices, thankfully. And Christians kind of gave it an entire new dimension by referring to it as the blood of Christ. However, when you look at Buddhism and Islam, it's an absolute no, because what alcohol can do is it can obviously adhere your inhibitions and can give you that sort of free-spiritedness that isn't necessarily tied in with the teachings of everybody. So you have this sort of yin and yang throughout history where some religions essentially championed alcohol and others totally said no. Now, when it comes to the social aspects, this is the fun part, because who doesn't love a great bev with friends? Throughout history, alcoholic beverages have been like the most sold, the most interesting, the most talked about, and they're at the heart of human interaction. I mean, you could go back hundreds of years and you'll find in the majority of every single area of civilization, there was one main place where you would gather. The majority of those gathering places were either pubs, a hole in the wall, or it was essentially your community garden that had been turned into a distillery or a factory or something along those lines. So you always have that connection and that need for being within that place in the first place. But the crucial part is activities such as laughing, sharing gossip, having a nice little sing-along with your friends. It essentially releases your endocrine system and gives you the same sort of effects as morphine. So when you're adding alcohol to that, which also incites this system, you end up getting a much sort of closer dynamic within social groups. Inhibitions are slightly lowered, confidence is slightly raised, and you end up creating those social bonds that are a lot closer when there is alcohol involved. And there's a lot of studies that go into the pros and cons of drinking culture and being social. But at the end of the day, us as humans, that is how we have learnt the world. We have learnt stories, we've delved into backstories and history over a good beverage. It's vital at the end of the day in helping strengthen those social bonds. And this is one of my favorite bits, actually. It was once presumed that agriculture was brought into sort of the human collaboration, essentially. The reason why they started agriculture originally was because they wanted to grow wheat, they wanted bread. But researchers have actually gone back and looked at the style of wheat and looked at the sort of landscape that it would be growing on. Turns out it would make absolutely horrific bread, but it would make banging beer. Absolutely banging beer. So there's this sort of leads to a great human theory that we didn't turn to agriculture for food. We had plenty of it. We turned to it because we wanted booze. And that is, yeah. Exactly. Please and thank you. We've done it for millennia and we know it really well. And then what happens when we take that away from people? Don't get overly happy. So, doing a quick rush up through American history, which is one of the sort of leading figures within cocktails. And when Prohibition came around in 1919, it was basically embarked as called the Noble Experiment. It was driven by the temperance movement to essentially make a better social life for people. However, when you take away booze, people don't like that very much. And sure enough, rather than creating the nice, happy, glorious society that the government was intending, what ended up happening was there was a lot more organized crime. There was a lot more ignorance of the law. We ended up with a huge rise in violence and alcohol-related crimes as well, which at the end of the day just kind of proved the point. Many of these most skilled bartenders in America, they boosted away. So probably most famously, Harry Craddock ran away to the Savoy, and a lot of other American bartenders ended up boosting down to Cuba and a bunch of other places throughout Europe, and they took all of their trainings and teachings with them. However, the guys that stayed, they started the rise of the speakeasy, which we love. We love a good speakeasy every now and then. But the ones that really worked well was where they were being clever about what they were serving. So the main one, which is why Jameson is actually so important within the Prohibition era, it was the most smuggled Irish whiskey, and actually over smuggled Scotch for about 10 years throughout the Prohibition era. And it was because the Jameson bottle was very cleverly designed. It was beautiful. And majority of places that were speakeasy style, if you were going to stay open, you didn't want a full back bar. You wanted 4 or 5 bottles that you could hide away. So cocktails sort of died a bit of a death around this time in the States. Started booming elsewhere. But in this area of the world, it was very much get in, get a bottle, and get out. So unfortunately, we didn't have that much of a sort of cocktail boom around this time. But what Jameson did was have a nice big boom of itself, because it would continue to distill and get shipped over to America. Now, plenty of homemade concoctions ended up happening around about this time. Good old bathtub gin. We love a cheeky little bathtub gin. But because it was homemade, it was relatively toxic. There wasn't necessarily any real rules or regulations about how to make it. And this is when people started playing around with fruits and with juices, especially at home. That was where you'd see much more of a sort of cocktail phase coming through. Now, when it eventually ended in 1939, yes, 1933, and cocktails again once took their rightful place back in history. So after the Depression, there's a couple of phases that sort of went through. So there was during the war efforts, everywhere between sort of London to Finland, the main distilleries were getting reallocated essentially for the war effort to produce industry strength alcohol. So there was a huge deficit in good Scotch, good cognac, all the stuff that you'd want to drink or were, classified the luxury goods. And this is where vodka had its little boom. Vodka went a little bit crazy for a while. And then we got to the 50s and 60s, and this is where the tiki bars came in, which is one of my favorite things. Everybody loves a cheeky zombie every now and then. But it was kind of a reaction to, it was the 50s and 60s, so it was a Cold War era. The Vietnam War was happening. There was turmoil kind of all over the place, and especially in the States. People needed an escape, and tiki bars offered that escape. You could drink something super fruity, you could feel like you were in the sunshine. There was all of that glorious Hawaiian shirt vibes, which I do look quite good in every now and then. But it offered them that escape. But it didn't necessarily become an entity for everybody. So it does dip in and out of phases. We've seen little bits of tiki come back every now and then, but it's not necessarily one that stood test of time. Modern inventions, then, when you started getting towards processed foods, there was new innovations happening with easy to store ingredients, and this allowed for the birth of the ready-to-go cocktail premix. There was then the soda gun that came along, which reinvented the highball, and then you've ended up with the celebrities jumping on the agave train, the modern phases and trends that have been built around maximalist versus minimalist. It's exciting to see the fact that history doesn't necessarily always have one route, And it depends on where you come from as well. I mean, I can only really give you a brief history on sort of the UK and the US. There's so much more that goes on around the world. So I do implore you to go and have a wee read. But if my ice people can start coming around with bitters and things, hint, hint. I am going to get you all to make your own classics today. I'm not working. I'm going to get you to work for me. So, classics. What makes a classic a classic? Anyone know? Written in a book by Jerry Thomas. Yeah, valid. So, I mean, when you think about it, classics, around about the sort of 90s, 2000s, when they really started becoming classified as classics, it was mainly because it was the popular drinks 40, 50 years prior. So it was basically what was popular back in the day. It's kind of that simple, because if you develop it any further, it gets a little bit more complicated. Classics are basically just drinks of the old way, and I think classics as a whole can be a very broad term. So I think in terms of, when we think about what is officially classed a classic, it comes up to publication. So the very first word cocktail was first printed in 1806 in an American newspaper. And it basically just gave the base of an old-fashioned. But it wasn't called an old-fashioned, it was just cocktail. That was legitimately any spirit, sugar, bitters, water, ice, done. That was the very first print, 1806. And then we didn't really see anything else for a wee while. There was definitely lots of recipes happening, but they weren't necessarily being publicized globally until good old Jerry Thomas, who produced the Bartender's Guide in 1862, which was essentially, it was one of the first guides of bartending that came across with true professionalism to the craft. It was the first book that really went into the techniques of why we do certain things behind the bar. It went into how he set his bar up as well. And this was the first sort of publication that enabled people to start developing their own precision cocktail making. During Prohibition, we did see a few changes kind of happen throughout recipes. But the main one now is your old-fashioned. So, huzzah. The guys are coming around with your bitters. You've got your ice. There should be muddlers on the table as well, and a nice little whack of whiskey. I will allow you to choose how heavy you pour your old-fashioned. It is personal preference. It is not for me to decide for you. But there's a muddler on the table, muddle away, and we've got our glorious classic triple distilled Jameson to enjoy the good old-fashioned way. You start with your pen. It's amazing. Love. Alrighty, so while you're all enjoying your delicious Jameson old-fashioned, it is safe to say that Jameson has solidified their spot as sort of the go-to Irish whiskey. And there's a good couple of reasons why. First one be marketing, consistency, and respect. Over history, brands have come and go, whereas who can tell me when Jameson was first established? Who by? Bravo, 10 out of 10. If I had prizes, I'd be throwing them out. But basically, Jameson have done something unique in the fact that they have consistently excelled in all of these areas. Their marketing campaigns, and they've successfully infiltrated the majority of homes throughout the UK. They are the go-to. When you say Irish whiskey, I think Jameson. And there's a reason for that. It's because their marketing has been done very, very cleverly, but they've also really focused on connecting with their core customers. And connecting with their core customers, they've been evoking emotion. This is what we love. Jameson tells a story, and it tells a beautiful story. It's one that has family ties. It's got lots of culture surrounded by it, but it's also got local culture and local history from Ireland that is very well integrated. And they scream and shout about it. which is a beautiful thing. And it's why Jameson is continuously known as your go-to. Aha, there we go. Delightful posters, the old school ones. It's the ones down here, Experience the Best of Ireland. It's not necessarily, it wasn't just Jameson talking about Jameson. They linked up with the local communities, and they essentially shared that marketing campaign together to bring people across that weren't just interested in whiskey, but were interested in seeing the rest of Ireland as well. It tells a story, and that evokes an emotion, which means that you then have a personal connection to that brand. Jameson consistently earned that respect. Now, good old film and TV in the early days of Hollywood. Good old Marilyn Monroe and all the bougie. They basically cocktails had a wonderful career within sort of old school Hollywood. The silver screen. Marilyn Monroe's husband having breakfast, whiskey sours in The 7-Year Itch, The Explanation of the Shake by William Powell and The Thin Man. And then who can ever forget the classic Shaken Not Stirred from 007. Now, cocktails were truly a cinematic revolution, but what it did was it wasn't necessarily just a drink. Cocktails gave a new dimension to the acting profession and giving the actors something to do with their hands. But what it can also do is, because of the flavor profiles and the stories that a classic cocktail can tell, plots and scene settings and character building can come from what they're drinking. So if you imagine James Bond with an old-fashioned, it doesn't just fit quite as well as the martini. But you see it throughout history, and you see it throughout the cinematic revolution, in that there are certain cocktails, like the Cosmopolitan in Sex and the City, for example. Bright pink, vodka-based, fruity, was going to go down with everybody that was watching Sex and the City. It was tied into the book, and there was a reason why the writer chose the Cosmo. It's because the character Carrie would connect with that cocktail. And the same goes for the majority of other shots on screen. The Old Fashioned, for example, in Mad Men. And then you've got the White Russian from The Big Lebowski. Casablanca was the French 75. All of them tie in to the story that movie was telling. The rise of advertising and the invention of the internet totally changed the game, because all of a sudden we were able to access recipes from hundreds of years ago that we would have never seen before, or we were able to access recipes from other countries, learn new things about different spirits, learn essentially engrossing ourselves in information, whereas previously we'd have had to go to the library and spend half a Saturday, which nobody really ever wanted to do. Now it's 2 clicks away. And that sharing of knowledge and the sharing of stories, it's how our minds kind of make sense of things, a connective framework with a journey and a destination. The success stories that emerge from cocktails are the ones where you do evoke that emotion and you evoke that feeling of having something created beautifully. Now, we get on to my favorite part, the case study. So, the hotel bar. For those of you that didn't already know, I was lucky enough to work at the Savoy Hotel, at the American Bar, and also in the Beaufort Bar as well, for around about 2 years. It was one of the most exciting jobs I've ever had. It was also one of the most stressful and demanding ones. And there's a reason why, and I'll go into that a little bit later. But essentially, the hotel is one of those beautiful time capsule spots where, because they have the ability to host so many people from all over the world, they have that ability to share stories in a much more meaningful manner and much more connective manner. So over the second half of the 19th century, the US surfed the wave of money and opulence. There was the gold boom, there was the railroad, and there was the oil boom as well, all happening around about this time. The rich then sought out opulence. They wanted to travel. They had the money to. They wanted to go and see the world, but they wanted to do it with grandeur. And American sort of style bars and hotels were starting to pop up around Paris and Rome and the southern areas of France for their summer holidays. Get that tan on. But the first sort of purpose-built luxury hotel in Britain was the Savoy. And it's the only sort of purpose-built luxury to accommodate those rich Americans coming in and rich travelers, but also for the UK. They wanted to hone in on that luxury, and they opened the doors in 1889 to a host of royals, dignitaries, high-end military, you name it. If you were famous, you were more than likely to have walked through the doors of Savoy. It's also, interestingly, a hotel of firsts, which was actually really exciting to learn about when I first started. So we were the very first hotel to have running electricity throughout the entire building. We were also the very first hotel to introduce the ensuite. So in the top level rooms, you had a bathroom that wasn't a communal one down the end of the hall. Savoy was the first hotel to do this. In addition to that, they also developed the world's first ascending room, which we now all know as an elevator. But we had the first ascending room, and actually, if you get the chance to go to the Savoy, it's the red elevator, and they haven't changed the interior at all. They've kept it exactly the same. It has a nice little seat as well for the ladies, because 2 rooms is too high to stand. And the main sort of focus of firsts was also that they wanted to be the first recognized all over the world bar. It was one of their sort of championships. They wanted to push the bar side of things because they saw that music, merriment, alcohol brought everybody together and created those core moments. So the American bar was definitely one of the first establishments to start doing that sort of American-style bartending and American-style cocktails. And the lovely Ada Coleman held the reign for about 25 years before good old Harry Craddock came in around 1925. Harry Craddock's Savoy Cocktail Book is one of the most republished cocktail books in the world. Hands up, who has it? Yeah, see, there we go. So he basically took the Savoy on a journey. So this is, here we go, 1930s Savoy. So here, where the bar is now, they did a little bit of a change. So I can show you on the second photo. But this is the original spot of where the bar was before it got moved. So it was a different area of the hotel at first. It then got moved to the spot where it is now. So if you come in the entrance, it's on the top left. Here we have the delightful Harry Craddock hiding a shaker somewhere in the Savoy. We have no idea where it actually is. No one has been able to find it. They have ripped up the bar twice. When Eric Lawrence redid it as well, still couldn't find it. So there's apparently one somewhere, but we are yet to source. But here's where the bar stands now. So you've got the sort of dispense station is hidden here. Dun, dun, dun. And then this was your main focus. Now we have a nice big mirror and everything as well. But the 30s was very much done for opulence. It was beautiful. It was very much adhered to the time and the style. And then when we moved through to the 1950s, can anybody tell me what happened to the Savoy? It got a little bit burnt, but then we rebuilt it and we turned it into a tiki bar. The American bar was tiki during the 50s. It wasn't tiki for very long, but this bamboo style got brought in. The back bar there, you can see all the additional extras, and there was definitely a focus on more tiki-style beverages coming out of Savoy at the 50s, whereas you still had that opulence and that sort of fine dining situation downstairs in the ballroom. So this was sort of used as like an offshoot of the sort of divine styling. By the 80s, the Savoy essentially came back, the American bar, to that gorgeous Art Deco, clean lines. This is actually delightful Peter Dorelli, a young Peter Dorelli in the middle there, who was a 10th head bartender. There's too many head bartenders. So yeah, this is 1980s Savoy, where we really honed in on that sort of clean line aesthetic and really focused on curating those perfect cocktails. We'd, started to become known for the Hanky Panky, White Lady, a few others, Cork Survivor. So it was known as a staple. And because hotels have that ability to reach so many more people, word of mouth happened much, much faster. So, for example, they also have, along with the funds, essentially, hotels have the money and the ability to reach so many more people because they were able to, they were writers, they were publishers, they were actors and actresses, they were speaking in public, or they were, talking to people that would then go and tell a publication. So you were being written about. It was a different kind of networking that the hotel bars were doing purely because of the guests that they were having in through the door. With the money also came the ability to change through the different phases and through the different styles. So unlike bars today, if a big grand change happens, it's not likely that we're going to be able to uproot and redo an entire bar. Whereas in a hotel, it's not necessarily the biggest crisis that they have ever faced. Now, the beauty is also that hotel bars, because they had that network and because they had that talking ability, they also created quite a few classics. Now, this is just a few sort of like top picks. The Hanky Panky has to be one of my favorite gin cocktails, to be honest. It is delicious. If you haven't had one before, I implore you to do so. But the story goes, basically, our lovely Ada Coleman here, she was one of the leading head bartenders at Savoy, and also was the only female head bartender in the Savoy until 2021. Took them 100 and something odd years. Yeah, it's all right. They learned the lesson now. So we now have the delightful Charles Haughey, who was like a comedian, writer, did a little bit of weird and wonderful stuff going on behind the scenes. And he basically came in one night, and Ada had been working on different cocktails for him for yonks. He was a very popular customer. And he basically asked her for something to blow his socks off. She came back, put the Hanky Panky in front of him, didn't tell him what it was or anything. And he took a nice big sip, and the phrase goes, "By Jove, that's a Hanky Panky." And there you are, the Hanky Panky name. But, I mean, other ones, we all know the Singapore Sling, Hotel Nacional, the Ritz Fizz, the Vieux Carré from New Orleans. There's such a wide variety of classics that come from hotels purely because of the way they were able to scream and shout about it, and they were able to network it as well. The sharing of knowledge between hotels was interesting. Now, when it comes to your delightful palate, this is where it gets interesting. Because over time, evolution, baby, it's happened. Basically, it's not just in techniques or inventions, but it's also in new health discoveries that essentially protected our taste buds. Beginning of the modern era, drinks saw like the launch of the premix, delivering the sweet and sour flavors without the painstaking of squeezing 1,000,001. And fresh juices, soda guns arrived, and it wasn't just Coke and tonic, it was ginger beer and fizzy orange and a whole whack of everything else. Many use these inventions and trends to sort of opt out of human sources and go for more mechanical, basically to solve the bartending deficit. But rather than training and opting for, core staff members, they were essentially taking the easy route out with these new inventions. So it all became a nice quick, the rise of the Harvey Wallbanger and Tequila Sunrise, Blue Lagoon. It was build, cocktail premix, fire it out. It wasn't necessarily honed into, this is how we create, core, beautiful, refinement, essentially. However, a revival did happen, especially when people like de Groff and Bradsell, they took time to spend with their teams and to spend with the network and the industry itself to really hone in why these bartending techniques were done with a purpose and why they mattered. So between them rose up a line of sort of career bartenders in the 80s who sort of picked up their techniques. Liquor brands rose to the challenge, started getting in lots of more weird and wonderful flavor profiles. buying in exotic flavors from all over the globe so that the bartenders could, again, start playing around and being a little bit more creative with fruitful flavors and so forth. So our history, we've evolved like our flavor profile changes through the evolutionary and biological factors. So we've all developed a taste for sugar. We all love sugar. It's ingrained into our DNA now. It's happened. And also for acids. And the rise of agriculture also created a rise in the amount of starch that we were eating, which then coincided with a taste preference. The Industrial Revolution saw a huge rise in the use of, Teflon and essentially harmful chemicals and things. We were lucky in the fact that governments did start doing the research and health professionals started doing the research to essentially take them away from our palates these days. So we've been able to essentially create a little bit more of a healthier choice overall. In addition to that, the rise of social media. Someone's going to tell you, oh, I had the most amazing fruit here, here, and here. Word of mouth showcase, it travels. So the way that we eat and drink today is drastically changed from even 30 years ago, purely because of the way that social media has showcased a variety of different flavor components and profiles from all over the globe, which is amazing. And we do love it. But the last final thing that is actually changing our flavor profiles is good old climate change. We love that. The planet's heating up. But in doing so, Sriracha actually recently produced a little write-up basically explaining the changes in the flavor profiles because the chilies that they are using and the ingredients that they're using have been affected so heavily with climate change. The Sriracha you get now is different to the Sriracha you got 10 years ago. So there's a lot of different industrial factors. There's environmental factors and the way that we taste and the way that we develop drinks now, which is actually really exciting because we're going to do a little taste test between two old schools. Ice, baby. Dun, 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 dun. Oh, come on. No one else doing it with me? So, ice trade. Does anyone know when the first sort of blocks of ice were being delivered?
1803.
Close. 1806.
Get out there.
Very close though. Impressed. So yeah, the first ice trade shipment began in 1806 with the very first shipment of ice being delivered from New England to the Caribbean. They basically would take natural lakes, chop, stick it into industrial houses that have been insulated, and then when it went onto the ships, they were essentially wrapped in straw and bale to keep that insulation, and then cut up on arrival. Nowadays, though, a little bit different. In the late sort of 1880s, Norwegian ice trades royally reigned London. You'd only really find Norwegian ice around about that time. But alas, we're inventors, and as humans, we like to push boundaries. And so we created the refrigerator, or icebox. And by 1925, the majority of homes around the world would have a refrigerator or icebox cooler. And that was essentially the death of natural ice trade. Nowadays, it's only kind of used for ice sculpturing and sort of fancy shows and ceremonies, whereas nowadays ice is produced on a massive scale industrially. And the ice innovations have had a huge impact on the development of how we drink cocktails. I mean, anyone that's consumed a room temperature can confirm it's a little bit critical to have ice for your contemporary cocktail. The science behind it as well, it's not just a chill. It's a blend, it's a dilute, it molds flavors, it smooths those sort of sharp edges, and it can create mastery where just plain water won't. And innovations in our industry will inevitably continue to happen. And I'll allow the boys to kind of lead on into what's going to be coming up next and what's happening now. But if we don't look into the past and why we've developed the way we have, we're never going to grow the right way because we'll continue to make the same mistakes. So it's all about looking back into the past, learning from it, growing from it, understanding where we come from. I think myself as well, like as a bartender, I'm very much aware of the impact that my family's had, the impact of where I've lived, where I've been able to travel to, the people I've met. That's all from birth all the way up to now. It's built me into who I am today. And it's the same goes with the cocktail. It grows and it will continue to grow. It won't ever stop growing, but it can revert back to favorite moments and iconic classics. And speaking of an iconic classic, we're all angels. Now, this is where it gets fun. Can I please have 2 volunteers? Unos? Someone over this side? Come on. Do it. Go. They'll make you mad and they'll pick you. Round of applause. Round of applause. Come on up. Come on up. All right. Speaking to the mic, who have we got?
Hello, my name's Kel. I'm from New Zealand. I love Jameson.
Woohoo!
And I'm Tyler Zielinski, and wear many hats in the industry, drinks writer, consultant, all sorts
He does
of
bits.
things. Yeah.
He does bits. Now, the delightful team are going to come around with 2 variations for you so that we can kind of do a little bit of a palate situation. Now, who knows the classic Angel Face cocktail? Go on, mate, hit me.
Just face African liqueur, calvados, and gin.
Very much. There we go. Equal parts. Again, if I had a hat, I'd be like flinging it this way. The classic is equal parts Calvados, gin, and apricot brandy. What the original Harry Craddock recipe from 1930s was, it's a shaken cocktail. Now, when we think about that now, it's a gin base, it's clear, your face is saying everything. I think it's very clever in the fact that we would definitely be looking at this in a different way to make it now. Modern style, I've gone for a wee stir. So we're going to have a little cocktail off. So if you want to take your station, you can take your station.
I wasn't ready for my cocktail.
It's all right. You can shake.
Yeah, it's all right.
Yeah, you can. So we've got the classic on this side, and we have the nice little twist on this side. So you have everything in here already. But what we've done with the twist is, rather than go on that equal part basis, it's a gin cocktail, right? So you want to be able to taste that gin. You don't want the Calvados to kind of overpower that. So with the gin, we've kept that at 30. But I've then brought down the level of Calvados and actually the level of apricot brandy. And I've added in a touch of Rankankan just to help sweeten off that flavor profile. Today's profiles, we are slightly sweeter than the crazy citric drama that might happen over here. Who knows? We've then done a final little taste. Thank you to Remy, as he brought over some delicious ice cider, which we've added in just a tiny touch just to help boost that apple profile. So you've got 2 of essentially the same cocktail, but 1 modern and 1 OG. And it's up to you to decide which one you like better. Yeah. All right. So, we could do this as a race. Let's do it as a race. We're doing it as a race. Okay. So.
Still gotta taste good.
Yeah, valid.
Still gotta taste good.
That's for us to decide.
I got a cartwheel. Half a cartwheel in each jeans, baby.
So you've got your ice. You're shaking. Beautiful. Cool. Just make sure you've got everything. Your stirry. Bush. Yeah, done. Iced. 50, 25, yeah.
Do we need like a countdown? We can count to 4.
We can count to 4. Look at this. Here we go.
What measurement?
Do 75. I think it's 75 that they put in. Cool. Alrighty.
Hands off.
I'm like, drum roll, please.
When I get to shake it.
Alrighty. 4, 3, 2, 1, go! Got the clock here. Pressure. Oh, this is looking good. Oh, it's tight. Oh, it's tight. You gotta shake it pretty hard. Go, go. Oh. That'll do, donkey. That'll do. Bush. Bravo. Hats off to our delightful championes. Do you want to bring it over here?
Cheers, mate.
Amazing. Now, first and foremost, what's the first thing that we notice straight away? Yeah, colour. So we've got the aerification happening with the shaking here, and we have the nice little dilution and keeping that clarity, but also giving it a little bit of body with the cooling. So enjoy. Let me know which one you think works best. I, however, I'm a modern girl. Yeah. I'm a modern girl.
Same.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you want to change? No.
Do you want to swap? Don't worry, I'll
I've
get you
never had a
both.
shaken.
I'll get you one of both.
Oh,
Yeah, see?
that was awful.
So Tyler's expression definitely kind of says it all. Yeah, feel free, guys. Yeah, Tyler's definition says it all.
You gotta give them the positive.
The balance of old school classics were highly different in the 30s to what we would do now, purely because of personal palates and the way that we've learned about different techniques and flavor profiles. We have access to a hell of a lot more. So